count in 3, 2, and 1. Well, Dr. Rob, almost 24 hours after we last saw each other in the studio, we're back at it again for an emergency podcast because we knew there were going to be changes, or at least we thought there were going to be changes. They came swift on Monday as John Butler fired as defensive coordinator. Shocked? Not shocked.
I guess a little surprised at that, excuse me, that it happened this quickly. Overall, not shocked. I mean, we talked about this yesterday, that there was kind of these key areas, and it was D coordinator, O coordinator, O-line coach, D-line coach, that we thought was where you needed to see some kind of change happen. And I'm not sure I necessarily was going to say it had to be a firing, but at least you needed to see some kind of revamping of the system. And I'm not sure I've had a lot of faith in who we've got, primarily as the line coaches on both sides of the ball right now. Now, the thing that comes with that is, I mean, do you make a change at a position like that, or do you say, hey, we're going to bring in a new coordinator, and it's the new coordinator's job to make that change?
What would you do? I mean, to me, I would want to leave that up to the coordinator. But at the end of the day, this all falls on Matt Rhule. And you tell me if I'm wrong here. The swift firing after just 1 year of John Butler shows you, after a 7-win season, the pressure Matt Rhule is under. He needs to win next year. And 7 wins doesn't cut it.
Well, and we talked about this on the podcast yesterday about it's a tough schedule. And when you look at that schedule, that's going to create some stress for that coaching staff, just in terms of how difficult it is compared to the last couple of years. So I think they do make a change. I'll be interested to see what they do. Is this going to be one of these situations where you take the current defensive backs coach and that guy becomes the defensive coordinator? You take a guy like Phil Snow and he just stays on as the D coordinator. I mean, that would be interesting to me, just because he was the D coordinator for Matt Rhule, Temple, Baylor, Carolina Panthers. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I mean, I don't think they were bad defenses. He's been around a long time. He's been a coordinator, UCLA, Washington, few other places over the years. So it's not like the guy doesn't have experience as a defensive coordinator. But I mean, that's also like saying Mike Riley is well experienced as a head coach. He is. Doesn't mean he's a great head coach. So that'll be interesting to see what they do. Do they go outside the program and try and find like a Jim Leonard or somebody like that to come in and take over? And I don't know if you'd be able to get a Jim Leonard away from the Denver Broncos, but I mean, it's one of those, I'm just kind of throwing out there a name that I would think of as like, hey, who do I think would be kind of a little bit of a more high profile defensive coordinator for the program?
Well, if Jim Leonard wants to be a college head coach, which I think he's more than capable, and I think Wisconsin screwed up several years ago by not hiring Jim Leonard to be the head coach, this might be the best pathway into it. But you also have to look at it. You have Auburn that just hired a new coach, Arkansas that just hired a new coach, LSU that just hired a new coach. You've got Florida that just hired a new coach. There's going to be some prime spots for some pretty marquee big time programs out there in search of a defensive coordinator.
And that's a great point, that if Rhule was thinking about making this change and he doesn't make it now, yeah, you might that pool of coordinators runs dry really quick.
So where did John Butler go wrong? The defensive numbers were not bad this year. However, when you look at the last 2 games of the season, Penn State and Iowa, they were steamrolled. They were steamrolled against Penn State. Iowa put up 40, and that's
Minnesota.
And Minnesota as well. Even though the numbers weren't horrible, where did he go wrong to get fired?
I think the biggest thing is, and this goes back to that game 1 against Cincinnati, that game ended, and I think everybody's, and we talked about this, everybody's first response was there was kind of a little bit of a, whew, we got that first win. And it was against a team that we were all hoping wasn't a bad team. I mean, I kind of feel like Cincinnati sort of dropped off there. There was a while they popped into the rankings, but I mean, heck, Nebraska popped into the rankings for a while. I think it's a case of that the next thing that went through my head after that Cincinnati game, after we got the win. God, our defensive line just got shoved off the ball. We had trouble stopping the run. Now, I would say with Cincinnati, you had a very good running quarterback, and it was the quarterback who did all the damage. But for the most part, when teams did damage against Nebraska, it's not like we were getting lit up through the air. We were getting lit up on the ground. And I think in this day and age, in a conference like the Big Ten, when you're in the Big Ten, the SEC, if you cannot stop the run, you're going to have a lot of long days. You're going to have a lot of long seasons. And that's, I think, where he went wrong, is that inability to stop the run on a consistent basis, week in and week out. And from a comparative standpoint, when you look at Nebraska's strength against the run the previous 2 years, it's really telling. You look at the numbers and it's rather obvious, the drop off in our ability to stop the run. Now, Nebraska's performance on the back end against the pass was good. I mean, we did a good job downfield against the pass. We lacked a pass rush, though. Now, that's the other thing. You look at our sack numbers. Nebraska's sack numbers this year left a lot to be desired. And that's the other thing that I think that really hurt us, is that you're sitting here going, okay, the defensive front is probably that front 3 or 4 guys, that front 7 for, in this defense, the front 6. It's that was probably the weakness on this defense, was the ability to get those guys to develop and stop the run and or generate an effective pass rush. It was just something we didn't have all season long. When teams drop back to pass, our sack numbers weren't great. Now, think about how good that pass defense would have been if we did have a good front 7, did mount a really good pass rush. You know what? It might have made a difference. I mean, it made it in the season on the whole, that if we could have mounted a pass rush, got some sacks, disrupted that offensive backfield on passing downs, how much better that overall pass defense would have been, and maybe that would have been enough to save his job. But we didn't have that. I mean, it's 2 big glaring holes on that defense: stopping the run, pass rush.
So was this a development problem, or was it an athletic problem, meaning they lost way too much from last year and weren't able to plug those holes? Was it, or a combination of both?
I think a combination of both, but when it comes to plugging those holes, I think it's imperative on a coaching staff now that if you've got a hole like that, you have to figure out a way to fill it, or even partially fill it. And I mean, look at Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher. I mean, you've got 2 huge, very athletic bodies up front that you lost, that I think were difference makers for Nebraska in that first 2 years that Matt Rhule was in Lincoln. That defense did a really good job stopping the run for the most part. Now, there was teams like, you were going to go play some of these better teams, they were going to gash on the ground just because, still a team in development. But you lose both of those guys. And even if Nebraska had found a guy, if they had gone out and, I'm going to use the Corleone from Cincinnati just because it's somebody that Nebraska fans have immediate experience with this season. You go out and find some 330-pound athletic dude who can clog up running lanes, can generate a pass rush. The guy can generate a pass rush at 330 pounds. That's rather impressive. You got to go find one guy like that.
Got to find a dude.
And what ended up happening was you lost a few guys on that defensive front, and they brought in some guys in the portal. But I mean, tell me who they brought in that was really not just a plug them in and they fill a spot and do a serviceable job. I'm talking about a game changer. Ty Robinson's a game changer. I think at least coupled up with Tide, Nash Hutmacher was a game changer. We needed a game changer up front, and we didn't have that. And I think that defensive coaching staff, it's now imperative on these coaching staffs to look at the situation Nebraska was in and go, okay, we've got Judy, we got Davis, we got kind of a group, kind of this collective of homegrown guys who I thought did a solid job. I don't know if they were game changers, but they did a solid job. But as a defensive staff, you've got to be able to look at what you've got and evaluate that and say, like, okay, do we have that game changer we need? And if we don't, we've got to go find them. And
so they need a game changer. They're going to need a defensive coordinator. I'm going back to my original.
Well, and I think they're going to need more than that, because you're going to get a new defensive coordinator in there. Is the D-line coach going to be here next year? Is the linebackers coach going to be here next year? What kind of decision-making carte blanche does the new D coordinator have when they come in? So I don't expect this to be the only change on that defensive staff.
Do you think there's going to be more changes coming on offense? Because we haven't.
I think so.
Yet. Yeah.
We haven't yet, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a waiting game here to see what happens with Rhule. If Rhule jumps in the portal, then absolutely. I think Donovan Rhule is gone. If Dylan gets in the portal, then Donovan is gone. And now whether that's of his own accord, where he goes, okay, you know what, I'm stepping down and I'm going to go test waters elsewhere. I'm going to try and get back into the NFL. I don't know what happens, but I think if Dylan hops in the portal, then you are going to see some changes on that offensive side of the ball.
I don't think you can run a program like that. If your offensive line is no good, you need to make the change, and it hasn't been good for a number of years. And the truth is, all you have to do is look, and you can say, well, the rushing numbers are good. Emmett Johnson did the bulk of the work there. All right,
and there was some bright spots on the offensive line where I looked at it and I'm able to look at it and say, like, okay, here's some positives, but here's the other thing. Unless I'm wrong here when I'm looking at the eligibility counts here, Lutovsky's gone, Justin Evans is gone, Spindler's gone. The strength of that offensive line was that middle three.
Yeah. And
so my question is when you're evaluating the rest of that offensive line, who have we seen at the guard / center positions that you're looking at and you're going, okay, here's guys that have looked good in game settings. And we saw a number of those younger guys against Akron and Houston Christian, but that's it. We really haven't seen anybody else since those games. It's been those three guys really have been it for the most part, other than occasional rest break here and there. Those guys have kind of manned those middle three positions, and they're gone. So that's a little disconcerting to me now. And so it's easy to say, hey, I like what I saw from those guys, but we need to know, has there been development behind those three guys? And from a coaching staff standpoint, Rhule's got to be able to look at what's coming up the pipeline in that offensive line room and be able to say, okay, do we have three plug and play guys who are going to be able to come in, man those three interior spots? And if we don't, that's a little bit of an indictment on the offensive line coach, more so than our usual gripes about the tackle spots. So we haven't seen the development at tackle. If there's not development at those guard and center spots, boy, we could be in a heap of trouble if we don't absolutely raid the portal again, because we're going to need you're going to need 4 more starters on that offensive line. That's assuming Pritchett stays. I hope he does.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. We don't know who's going to stay and who's going to go because you're going to lose some. I mean, that's going to happen every single year. You just got to assume everybody's in the portal and who you going to keep, because that's what Matt Rhule's doing right now, is trying to keep every one of his players, because everybody's going, well, I'm going to get paid this. I'm going to get paid this. I mean, that's just the way today's college football world is. If you're new to the Doc Talk podcast, of course, hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and give this video a like. Leave your comments in the comment section. You heard Dr. Rob talk a little bit about what we talked about on our big podcast, which went yesterday. Go back and watch that whole thing. We talk about the Iowa game. We talk a lot about possible coaching changes and what also needs to be fixed. So this is kind of like we don't do a breaking news podcast all that often, but I thought it was noteworthy that with John Butler getting fired, to at least address it, let Rob sound off on it. And, of course, if any more people get fired, well, we'll try to do the exact same thing. How's that? Dr. Rob, thanks for taking 15, 20 minutes with me tonight. And go Giants tonight. Go Giants.
We'll see what happens. I don't have a lot of the hope tank is low for Giants Nation. So we'll see what happens.
All right, buddy. We'll see you later.
All right. Take it easy.
All right. Hold on real